Dartmouth Democratic Town Committee, and we are very pleased to have all of you here. We appreciate your interest in this race and for your commitment to good government. We especially thank Dartmouth Community TV for getting this procedure out to a much bigger audience that is here, and I know it seems like every living person in the town of Dartmouth and Ward 1 of New Bedford is in this room, but not exactly. As it is, and I'm sorry for those of you who are standing, we have commandeered every chair that was in an unlocked room that we could get to. So I apologize for that. We also extend our appreciation to Steve and Ed for being part of the informing of voters in Dartmouth and Ward 1 New Bedford. I can assure you that nothing about being a candidate for a statewide office, nothing is easy. And both of these candidates have worked hard just to get in this room. Why they're doing it, I don't know, but
we'll find out.
It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work. Anyway, so they certainly appreciate you being here. We appreciate you being here. We have had 3x5 index cards for questions that you might want to ask the candidates. It's likely that if you are about to fill one out, or if you have filled one out, it is likely that we will not get to your question because we have like 300 or 400 here. However, Bess Coughlin is putting them in categories. We will do the very best we can. We have had a series of ground rules that have been explained to the candidates. There are no posters in here. There are no noisemakers. We will not tolerate incivility, which looking at you, I don't think we're going to have much of that. However, I am aware that there are many relatives and friends of these two candidates, and you want to wish them well. But we will not have demonstrations of approval or disapproval. This is being taped by Dartmouth Community TV, going to go out to the whole community, and so I would hope you would be able to do that. All right, so according to our procedure, we have already had a coin toss as to who's going to go first and who goes second, and we already did all of that. So according to our procedure, the first question, which Steve will answer first, the first question, please tell us what you are for as regarding the municipalities of Massachusetts 9th Bristol District. Steve.
Thank you, Jim. So first off, thank you to the Democratic Town Committee and everyone here tonight and everyone watching on TV. It's really cool to see yourself on the screen. All right. So, I've lived in this town pretty much my entire life. I'm a fourth-generation resident. And when I got into this race, it wasn't because, I had this desire to run for office. It was really because a lot of people said, we need somebody great to run for this position. This seat hasn't been empty for, since 2010. So, as I've knocked on doors, made phone calls, met people at events across the district, I really came up with kind of four things. And this was listening to people. People right off the bat were asking me, what are your pillars? And they wanted me to have something right out of the gate. And I said, I'm not going to do that. My job is to be a representative of the people of this district. So I waited, regardless of what people said, saying we need to put something up there right away. And I listened first. My grandfather taught me 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen more than you speak. And so that's the type of representative I want to be. I want to listen first, and then I'll speak about that topic. So as I knocked on doors across the district, it became pretty apparent within the first month or so, just myself knocking on doors, and we have a lot of great people who've been knocking on doors with me, and they came back with the same feedback, and it was all pretty much the same. And so we have 4 pillars. The one that was by far the most is affordability. And affordability is something that affects people in a lot of different ways. Housing affordability, utilities affordability, just everyday, groceries and expenses and affordability. And so for me, that is something that I think we need to really work on. And so I want to find ways to solve that problem. Some of the things I've talked about is, trying to work on some housing things at the State House, because that's something that I have firsthand experience with. I've been doing this for 23 years, and I understand housing at a deep level and what works and what doesn't work. I think that we could look at some insurance reform. I think insurance is getting expensive. That's another place where expenses are jumping up. And, just looking at affordability in general, when you look at the utilities out there, and there's some ways I think we can work with, looking at the Mass Save program, looking at the things that we need to fix and find solutions for that. I'm a solutions-focused kind of person. I don't like to complain about things. The other area that people were talking about a lot was infrastructure. With all of the 40B developments that are now going to be going on in town, that's going to put a strain on our town in a lot of different ways. Water, sewer, the tangential effect down the road once they're in place of traffic and fire, police, all the public safety services, and our schools as well. And so we need to look at those things and say, how are we going to fix that? I'm for trying to bring back funding for water. One of the ideas I've talked about with a few different people. I actually spent some time, a couple hours actually, just chatting with Tim Barber, and just wanting to listen again, not talking, listening. And one of the great ideas is trying to tie into Fall River for water supply. The sewer treatment plant is going to need to be upgraded in the future, right? We need to start planning for this stuff now. The one good thing that the town is doing is they're actually looking at a long-term plan. They're trying to do some long-term planning, and that's great. As a state representative, I'm not in that process, but I can help with that process by trying to bring funds back and try to help with being that go-between between the state to try to find resources. The third thing that was pretty apparent, and it's something that's really close to my heart, is preserving our character, our natural resources, our farms, and our open space. I'm a fourth generation resident, and I had both sides of my family had farms in this town, and they're not there anymore. Those farms are long gone. But that was something to me that, with the way I was brought up, and even my grandfather had a small farm on Hathaway Road, right near one of the 40B developments that are going to go in. My cousin now lives there today, and we need to keep that character of our town. We need to grow as a town. You don't want to be a community that's not moving forward, but we need to have smart growth and smart decisions to move in a smart way, so it's planned growth and not having it all hit all at once. So preserving open space, preserving our farms. When you preserve farms, you actually bring back, you can keep food in the community, so you're having a local economy that is vibrant versus having to buy food that comes in from other countries. If you keep the food local, you're actually keeping money in the district. The last thing was fostering small businesses and keeping money here, like I was just talking about. And so there are a lot of ways we can do that. We can look at farm to table. I think we could do that sometimes working with the schools. I think if we could bring some of our local food to the schools so they could have some of that would be fantastic. And bringing resources from the state to help improve farm-to-table opportunities. Creating good, reliable jobs for the people in this district is huge. We want people when they're living here, we don't want them to have to drive to Boston all the time to find a good job. We want to bring jobs here. So bringing incentives in for employers, but those tax incentives have to make sense financially. So if we're going to bring in an employer into this town, and or into New Bedford, and we're going to give them a tax incentive, the math has to work in our favor. We can't be losing money on those tax incentives. So those are the four things that when I was, again, talking to people in the district that they said were the most important to them. And that's what I'm going to champion when I get to the State House. I want to be a true representative for each and every one of you, and I want to be a listener. So that's why my cell phone number is in the bottom of all my information. It's on my website. You can reach out to me, ask me a question, text me, call me, send me an email. Happy to get back to you and have a conversation. I want to listen. And so that's it.
Thank you very much. Ed Pacheco, I'm going to ask you the same question. Please tell us what you are for as regarding the municipalities of the Massachusetts 9th Bristol District.
Good evening, Jim. And again, as a formality, thank you to Dartmouth Dems for hosting this. Thank you to my opponent for being here. And thank you to all of you that are here today to find out who your candidates are and what they're about. This is how the system works, by having an informed electorate. So my approach to the state representative seat in terms of being an elected official and how we're going to represent the municipalities, particularly Dartmouth and New Bedford. I know sometimes New Bedford, even though there are only 3 precincts, they tend to get overlooked. But they are very much part of our district, and they require as much attention as the town of Dartmouth does. And so we need to make sure that if I'm state representative, that all of those people are being represented. So my focuses are on reform, because by doing some things with reform, we can actually impact the quality of life in both Dartmouth and New Bedford. So the first thing that I would talk about is reform of the 40B. Do we need affordable housing in the district? Absolutely. I know this on a personal level. I have 6 daughters, 4 are college graduates, 5 of the 6 still live at home. One of them is an educator at Taunton High School, and she cannot afford to live in the community that she was raised in because the cost of living in affordable housing is crushing her. And it's not just my children, it's your children as well. So, we had this discussion before about 40B. Well, you're locked in at 10%, and you have to meet the 10% threshold. And that's accurate. But the law is not written in stone. The purpose of law is to have it evolve and change to the needs of the communities that it's impacting. Law changes every day. So one of my first focuses would be 40B law. We need to change the way that it's calculated. Instead of just saying it's 10% across the board, we need to recognize that not all of the communities are the same, and that what their capabilities are as a community are all different, depending on the size of the community. Things like population and growth should be considered in the 40B formula. Things like actual housing need, things like infrastructure. We have a very strained wastewater system in the town of Dartmouth that's nearly at 80% capacity. It's going to cost everyone sitting in this room that owns a home and watching on TV somewhere between $50 and $70 million to replace. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when is happening sooner than later. So if we have this continued push towards 40B in the current status, we're going to have challenges. We're going to have existing residents who have paid betterments who are going to be excluded from tying into this wastewater system because over 80%, there's a moratorium that puts in place. And it doesn't matter if you're already in town and you already have construction, you're going to be prohibited from building until that system is brought up to speed. So the other thing that we need to look at and consider is talking about land and environmental constraints. Just because we have a good-sized patch of land doesn't mean we should be throwing 300 houses on top of it and using the term 40B to get away with it. There is so much more behind it that impacts our community. The amount of traffic, the amount of water that they're going to use. For example, I've been an outspoken opponent to this proposed project on Hathaway Road. it's going to use 53,000 gallons of water a day. We bought $2 million worth of water last year from our neighbors in New Bedford. This year, we're on track for $3 million. And everyone in this room that has a home is paying for that. So this is why I think that we need to reform the 40B formula. The second thing that we need to reform is how we're looking at our utilities. So we need to use the legislature to change the rules of the game, because that's what it comes down to. The utility companies are posting record billion-dollar profits off of everyone in this room. So we need to use the law in the legislature to change the law and the rules that they're going by in order to create our rates. So we need to start getting more directly involved with the DPU proceedings so that they know that we want to know what the electric and gas delivery charges actually are and why they're there. We also want to talk about submitting formal comments to DPU, requesting meetings with the DPU commissioners and staff, bringing all of us to local ratepayers into the record so that they understand. And then we need to attack the bills from the cost side, not just the rate side. We want to know, what does this distribution charge for? What are transmission charges for? What are storm recovery fees? What is the actual amount of money that's going into infrastructure investments? Anybody that lives in the south end of town, you've lost power multiple times over the past couple of weeks every time the temperature goes over 80 degrees, and they're telling us it's because of the infrastructure. Well, you're charging us an infrastructure fee. So why is this happening, right? So these are the things that we need to talk about when we're looking at how we control our utility costs. The last piece of this is really something that I like to be proactive about. Large-scale data centers are a significant threat to our communities. These centers are opportunistic. They come into communities and they take from communities far more than they give back. They come in with promises of tax relief and infrastructure upgrades, but the amount of utilities they use, the amount of water they use, the amount of land that they consume, the amount of noise pollution that these things create is immense. So what I'm recommending, and I have a sample bill drafted for day one that I would file as your state legislature, would be to prevent large-scale data centers coming into a community with populations of less than 100,000 people without consent from the communities first. We need to start getting proactive on how we start working on these problems rather than waiting until they're knocking on our doors, because they will come knocking. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Communities like Dartmouth that have a lot of swath of land and farms that have financial challenges are ripe for the picking. So those are some of the things that I am pro in terms of our communities in the 9th Bristol District. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. At the end of each of the two major questions that we're asking, that's where we're going to get in the questions from the audience. So this is the first one, and we'll have Steve start this one first. The Massachusetts House was designed as a citizen legislature where members bring real-world working experience to Boston. How does your daily line of work keep you grounded in the real-world struggles of South Coast families?
That's a great question. So on a daily basis, I have to work with families who are struggling to find an apartment to rent, find a house to buy. A lot of times, first-time home buyers. Sometimes I'm dealing with seniors and trying to help them stay in their homes because they have, they want to try to stay there before having to go into either living with family or going into a facility. And, when I see these challenges, these are the things that, for me, I believe I can bring to the State House, because that's our biggest challenge in Massachusetts right now. It's our housing crisis. So having that ability to be in touch with what people need and what their concerns are and understand it at a much deeper level, because I'm doing it on a daily basis instead of talking about it, that's the type of experience I'm going to bring to the State House to solve pretty much the biggest challenge in our state. I've been working on the housing crisis way before it was a thing and it was a housing crisis. I've been working on this since like 2013, and we've been trying to fix this, and we're trying to get things passed, but it's not getting passed. And so you need someone up at the State House who can actually solve the problems up there. When you have someone who's not going to be working in the community anymore, that actually they're going to be representing and they're just going to be up at the State House, that's not effective leadership. I plan on having time where I'm going to be meeting with people. I'm going to have office hours on a monthly basis in both New Bedford and in Dartmouth. And I plan on going to the select board meetings quarterly to give them a report and to listen for them, and do the same thing at the city council in New Bedford with the other reps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to remind the audience, the line of questions that we're on now are 2-minute replies. So, Ed, same question to you. The Massachusetts House was designed as a citizen legislature where members bring real-world working experience to Boston. How does your daily line of work keep you grounded in the real-world struggles of South Coast families?
Well, I can tell you the first thing is all I have to do is look at my checkbook as a reminder. So I work 2 jobs. I work a daytime job, 40 hours a week, sometimes more, as the director of transportation for a nonprofit that works with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. My second job, like many of the working families in the 9th Bristol District, is I bartend. I bartend because I need a second income, just like most of the people probably in this room and watching at home. So when you have a family as large as my wife and I, as I said, we have 6 daughters, you learn how to stretch a buck. That is the same approach that you have to take to the State House. The days of wanton spending and trying to figure out what the outcomes are later have to come to an end. So when I talk about things on a personal level, I understand firsthand what it means to be a struggling working class family, because I am a representative of the working class family. And every day I get up and go out to work and make sure that I have enough to pay the bills and stretch the buck. And that's the same kind of personal approach that I will take to Beacon Hill. Because at the end of the day, if I'm not there representing the hardworking people and retirees that are working, then why would I be there? What's the point of my candidacy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ed, I will have you go first on this next question. What is your official position on the legislature being audited by the state auditor?
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. 72% of Democrats and Republicans and unenrolled voters got together and said, we want our state house, our state representative to be accountable. Try getting that kind of consensus on anything. Beyond, and this is the one thing that we got a consensus on, and they put it in the can. It's outrageous. So, long story short, yes to the audit, yes to the audit, yes to the audit. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, same question. What is your official position on the legislature being audited by the state auditor?
I'll say yes one time to that. So, as I, like many of you, I'm guessing you all voted like myself for the audit, right? So, we read the question on the ballot, we voted for it. I didn't really do a lot of digging into it. Once I got into the race, I started to dig into it a little bit more to get the answers. So one of the things that I don't think anyone probably realizes, or most people don't, is that they're already audited every year by PricewaterhouseCoopers. So that's already one stopgap that I think we already have. They definitely need to comply with what we voted for, and they definitely need to be audited. The only concern I have at this point is that the auditor has made it a very political thing. And I don't believe politics belongs in an audit process. I believe that it should be about the facts and about the numbers, and that's it. You don't need to bring politics into it. That's not what an audit's about. It's about getting the facts, getting the information, and getting it out there. So yes, I want to see an audit. My hope is that the auditor can focus on the audit and not about the political aspect of it. The court has weighed in. They've said what can and can't be audited. Hopefully the court will be open to additional questions if the auditor does bring it forward, and the legislature will have to comply. But I just want to see us get back to just doing what the people want and taking the politics out of things. Everything's becoming way too political. It's just not what we're looking for. The people I talk to across the district, when I knock on their doors, they don't want politicians that are political. They want politicians. They want representatives. That's what they really want. They want people going to represent them, represent the people in the district. That's what I'm going to do. That's the reason why I got into this race, because I wanted to do that for the people in this district. Not for political aspirations, not to go and work my way up the ladder at the State House. My goal and my only focus is to be here for the people.
Thank you. We'll stick with you again, Steve. Do you believe state tax dollars should support charter schools or parochial/religious schools? And part B, why?
Okay. So the charter schools and the parochial schools that we have out there, there's a need to support them. They do fill a need within the community. I think our public schools do a great job. We lead the nation, and one of the best educational systems in the country. And the school systems that we have on the South Coast are pretty exceptional as well. I think that taking money from public schools is a problem, but if there's money already as part of the process, I think that is something that we can look at and consider. But when any of these decisions are made, and the way I want to represent people is I want to bring in people on all sides. I want to bring in the people who are representing the charter schools, the people who are representing the parochial schools, and the MTA representing the teachers, and people representing all the public schools. And I want to get them at a table and say, what can we agree on? How do we make this work? I want to find solutions. I want to figure out where's the common ground so we can work together and work on that common ground, as opposed to having people on one side saying, we're not going to do this, and people on the other side saying, we're not going to do this. That doesn't get stuff done. It's bringing people together, sitting down at a table and saying, how do we get this accomplished so we can actually get things done for the people we're supposed to be taking care of, the people in the district and the people in Massachusetts.
Okay, Ed, same question to you. Do you believe state tax dollars should support charter schools or parochial/religious schools, and why?
So there's a saying that I'm fond of. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Charter schools are here, parochial schools are here, and they serve a purpose, but I don't feel that we need an expansion in them. We, in the public school sector, having worked at Dartmouth High School as a night security officer, I had engagement with a lot of the educators at Dartmouth High. And obviously, when you have 6 children going through the school systems, you get to meet the teachers pretty much throughout every school level. And my feeling is that we need to stop asking our educators to do more with less. So if that means that we are not funding additional charter schools and diverting public tax dollars to charter schools or to parochial schools, then we don't. We need to start looking at where our core of students are. And so I think that the charter schools that are there are great. I think the parochial schools, I was a product of a parochial school, are fantastic. They serve a purpose. But I feel that our investment needs to be in our public schools. So, thank you.
Okay, this will be the last question in this segment, and then we'll move on to big question number 2. So we'll start with Ed again. Rents are undeniably too high for young people and seniors in our district, but capping prices doesn't build single-family homes or open up new apartments. Where do you stand on rent control, and why is capping prices better or worse than directly building more housing inventory?
So I am a person that believes that every idea should be vetted. Every idea should be discussed, and rent control is no different. The fact that the real estate industry has worked diligently to prevent even the discussion on a state level for rent control is appalling. We have people, as I've said earlier, young people, young professionals who are our future tax base that cannot afford to live on their own. And part of the reason is because the market values are so high on these properties, and the rents, even when they're considered affordable. You know, a lot of people don't even realize that when we use a base rate for affordable housing in Dartmouth, we're grouped into the area that's included in Providence, Rhode Island. So when you take a major capital city and you use that as a baseline for what's considered affordable to someone in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, how is that affordable? It's not. The system is broke. So, you know, we had, back in ~24, budgeted $5.12 billion for affordable housing. Only about $2.12 billion of that has even been accessed. It was meant to be used to construct housing, to construct apartments, and it's not being used appropriately. Those are the funds that we should be accessing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Steve, rents are undeniably too high for young people and seniors in our district, but capping prices doesn't build single-family homes or open up new apartments. Where do you stand on rent control, and why is capping prices better or worse than directly building more housing inventory?
So that is a fantastic question, and that is something that I have firsthand experience with. So on a daily basis, I see the challenges that renters face, homeowners face, home buyers, home sellers. It's a problem right now. Rent control is a great idea in theory, but it doesn't work in the long run. Here's how it works. We implement rent control today. Everyone who's in rental housing, they're all set. Their rent's capped. They're good. What about the close to 300,000 units that we need to be built in the next 10 years? Where are those people going to live? Because what happens is what's been shown across the country, whenever they've had rent control in all sorts of cities across the country, is that as soon as rent control goes in, builders pull out. So we're going to put a Band-Aid on a problem and exacerbate a problem that we need to fix. We need to start building housing, but we need to build housing in a smart, well-planned way, and it needs to be something that it's being done across the Commonwealth. Not just in Dartmouth, not just in New Bedford, but across the Commonwealth. We need housing that is available for people that are first-time buyers, workforce housing. We don't need these big McMansions being built. You know, these $800,000, $900,000 homes that are huge, 3,000, 4,000 square feet. We need housing that a renter can move into. That frees up housing for the next person that needs to find a rental. And if there's open units, supply and demand, the market takes care of rents and keeps rents lower. So that's what I want to focus on, is finding ways to build more workforce housing for the average person, so that my son who's sitting in the front row can actually buy a house in this town someday, or at least maybe live in New Bedford nearby, so he can live near us and not have to move to some other part of the country.
Thank you very much. I realize that was only 4 questions from the audience. I will try to get some in at the end, but I'm watching the clock. We're going to get to our second big question, and Ed Pacheco will answer this first. Please tell us what you are for as regarding the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
10 minutes isn't going to be enough. We're going to give this a shot.
A shotgun.
It's okay. And I support that right.
I knew you would.
So there are so many, this is such an open question, and there's so many things that need to be done, not only just for Dartmouth and New Bedford, but as a district that would consequently impact our well-being. So the first thing is, and I've been talking about this for 8 months. In fact, folks, most of the views that I've had, I've been sharing for well over 8 months on our website, pachecoforthepeople.com. So some of you have probably already heard this, and I apologize, but the answer doesn't change with the issue. So the first thing I support is exploration of Medicare for all. We are getting crushed as taxpayers and insurance buyers on a daily basis by our premiums. And I think it's criminal not to have a candid discussion about how we can make health insurance in this state more affordable for everyone, not just the upper crust, not just the lower crust, everyone in this room. And I'm pleased to see that there's a commission that's been shaped and that's starting to look at. Now, obviously with this, we have to make sure that when we do this, that we're doing it cautiously, because let's call it what it is. The healthcare insurance industry is a huge, huge part of the economy. And they're one of the biggest employers in Massachusetts across the board. And they're also one of the biggest lobbyists. So we need to make sure that we do our due diligence. And if, in fact, we're able to move forward with this when everything is done after the discussion, then that's what we do. But the discussion has to be had. That's how we get ahead. We don't get ahead by sticking things in drawers and just praying that something is going to change somewhere. We have to take action to start making positive change in the taxpayers' lives, our own lives. We're controlling our own destiny here, basically. So, all for Medicare for all being explored. I also support H605, which for those of you, I love legislative bingo. They throw numbers on everything. Sometimes there are 3 numbers, 4 numbers, but H605 is called the Common Start Bill. Common Start basically is a universal system for affordable, high-quality early education and childcare for Massachusetts families, with a phased rollout prioritizing the most in need. Why childcare? Well, for one, my mother was an early childhood education teacher for almost 30 years, and I understand firsthand the impact that early childhood education can make on a child's life in preparation to get them ready for elementary school. But let's call it what it is. Daycare is extremely expensive. And when you have people that are working and making minimum wage, how are they supposed to afford $200, $300, $400 a week per child and still be able to compete with paying their rent, paying their groceries, paying their utilities. They can't. So we need to make sure that we're supporting these people and giving them the ability to provide for themselves rather than them just getting public assistance. If you want people to be less reliant on public assistance, you have to create opportunities in order to be able to do that. This is what Common Start would do. I also support H 605. Well, I already talked about H 605. Let's talk about Clean Slate. Clean Slate is a legislative bill that streamlines a process that's already in place. You go to jail, you have a charge on your record, you've done your time, you get out, and certain crimes can be removed from your criminal record. Why is this important? It's important because it gives people the opportunity to start fresh as an adult and to lower the recidivism rate, meaning the amount of likelihood of them repeating crime because they can't provide for themselves. If you want someone to be a model citizen or to contribute to society, they have to be given opportunities. You can't just say, you went to jail, you don't deserve a chance, but yet, in the same token, we also don't want you to be criminal again. You have to wear that balance. And that's where a clean slate is so important in terms of helping support the community. Let's talk about wastewater. So, State Representative Markey, who will be one of our predecessors, started the ball rolling with a bill back several years, back in 2025 called, it was, again, legislative bingo, number 1000. And the legislative bill here, what it did is it called for a committee to support the infrastructure of coastal communities. But it didn't go far enough. It got an 11-0 vote out of committee recommending it, but it died on arrival. It didn't have enough timetables on it. It didn't have enough specifics on it. But what it did have was good bones to be able to build a coalition of coastal communities. Because at the end of the day, the state representative of Dartmouth is one person out of 160. So if you don't have a coalition to help move your agenda forward, and that impacts everyone on the South Coast, from Swansea to the Cape, then you don't get ahead. What my proposal would be, and I have a bill ready and drafted to go for this, is it would create a 23-person member committee that would explore the ability to create a bond bill that would allow communities like Dartmouth, like New Bedford, like Westport, to access these funds to help address our wastewater struggles. We know we're going to need one. We just don't know when, but it's coming. So we need to start the ball rolling now rather than waiting until one day when Tim Barber says, hey guys, listen, we're over our 80% capacity. You may start seeing some backups. You may not see, we can't add any more tie-ins. We can't add more affordable housing because we don't have the infrastructure. The ball has to start now so that we're ready 3 or 4 years down the road. Again, proactive approach rather than waiting to be reactive legislation. I am pro-Dartmouth, plain and simple. At the high school when we were there, they had an amazing slogan that went out into the community, One Dartmouth. I would want to modify that and say 1/9 Bristol. As Dartmouth goes, New Bedford goes. And as New Bedford goes, Dartmouth goes. If Parallel Products gets built in the north end of New Bedford, and that leaks into the Pascomanset River, guess where that comes to? Our water supply. So it behooves us to support our neighbors in New Bedford to make sure that Parallel Products doesn't get it. It behooves us to make sure that Station 9, which impacts part of the 9th Bristol District, stays open. Unfortunately, I was at Mass on Sunday with my wife, and there was a medical emergency in St. Gabriel's Church, which is 1 block from Station 9. The response crew came from Sassaquin. It took them almost 10 minutes for a woman that we were trying to help with what limited resources we had. That's just the tip of the iceberg of what the people of New Bedford in the 9th Bristol District are going to feel if the Station 9 gets closed, and it's unfair. But most of all, the thing that I'm about is making sure that our tax dollars have an accountability and a transparency that will be brought to everyone. So when you ask what I'm about on a state level, those are the things that I value, that I think will have the most impact on the 9th Bristol District and the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Steve, the same question to you. Please tell us what you are for as regarding the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Thank you. So I'll keep it focused on the state level because that's what the question's about. So I've been talking about it. I'm not trying to beat a drum or beat a dead horse, but the housing crisis is real. And I want to fix it. I want to get up there and fix this for everybody. I've testified in front of committees at the State House on legislation in the past. I've advocated for housing policy. I understand how legislation works. I understand how bills get put together and then how they're advocated for. I'm looking forward to being on the other side of the table and actually listening to all the groups that come in and trying to figure out what the common sense solution is and trying to bring people together. We need a statewide solution because this is a statewide problem. We don't need housing just being forced on a few communities because they have infrastructure. We need to find ways to incentivize towns to actually accept people to build houses. Because if we can spread the housing out across the state, it doesn't become burdensome like what's happened in our town. There are a lot of ways we can do that. We can amend 40B is one thing. We've talked about that. But there are some other ways. We can help first-time home buyers. There's a first-time home buyer savings account that was proposed a while ago by the Realtor organization. It hasn't been taken up and pushed forward. There's really been no one there to champion that. I want to champion that. The way that works is if you've ever seen a college savings account where you can put money in and get a tax benefit, it works the same way. You get a tax benefit for putting money into a special account just for saving for a down payment for a house. The great thing about it is because people say, well, where's that money going to go? You're taking it out of the coffers for the state. But every house in Massachusetts that sells brings in approximately $260,000 or more in economic impact into the local area. So that means you're getting plumbers working, electricians working, carpenters working. The people that are directly working on the transaction are bringing money in. You see the tangential effect of the carpet cleaning company gets called to come in and clean carpets. The local paint store has people buying paint and other supplies for their home. And you have that economic impact that helps the local community. So that's something that I want to see us do with those first-time home buyer savings accounts. So it actually helps the people who are trying to get into homes, who currently can't, be able to get into a home. That frees up rental housing. That makes the rental market a little bit easier. The other thing is healthcare. And this is something that I understand at a deep level. My wife, Sue, is an oncology nurse of 28 years. We talk about it on a daily basis, what she has to go through as a healthcare provider. She just went through something where she had to have surgery, and when we were back in the spring, she had a test. The test basically showed what she needed. They had to wait for her to go in for a doctor's appointment, for the doctor to look at the document and say, oh, you need the surgery. That doesn't make sense. He could have looked at the report, because that's all he did. It was like probably a 10-minute appointment. He could have looked at it and said, hey, you can go ahead and have the surgery because you already need this. Why have somebody come in for an appointment that's not necessary and you're spending, now that costs the insurance company money. That's wasteful spending on the healthcare side. So she sees it on that side of it as a patient, but then she had to go back to work early this week from taking time off because her clinic is so short-staffed. So she felt bad for the people there that she went back early and worked while she should be recovering. That's a problem with our healthcare system. We need to start putting regulations in place and finding solutions for that type of stuff. Because when we solve that problem, it brings down costs. It brings down insurance costs. It brings down costs of so many different things. And it makes things work the way they should be working instead of having all this extra bureaucratic levels that just don't make sense. I had the very good opportunity today to meet with Cheryl Bartlett. She's the CEO of the New Bedford Community Health Center. Spent a little over an hour chatting with her today. She is a brilliant lady. What she's done with that place when she took over, they were like $2 million in debt, and now they have a ton of money in the bank, and they're doing tremendous things to improve the ability for people in New Bedford to actually have care. Primary care providing is primarily in Fairhaven and in Dartmouth. There really isn't really much primary care anymore in New Bedford, and they're filling that need. We need to look at ways to bring more primary care into New Bedford to service that community. Because a lot of those people, they don't have the ability to get a ride over, because they have to take a bus. It'll take them hours to take the bus because they don't have transportation to get to Fairhaven by the time they catch a bus and catch another bus and get over there. Or the same thing to get into Dartmouth. So these are things that, like, just to me, is common sense that we just need to fix. It's just getting people to the table and saying, how do we fix this? How do we make this work? The other thing is at the State House is going to be, integrity, ethics, and accessibility. We talked a little bit about the audit, but I think transparency, to me, is one of the most important things. When you just answer the questions honestly and you tell people the truth, it makes things a lot easier, right? When you're not telling people the truth and you're trying to figure out ways to get around it, it doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve the person that's doing that, and it doesn't serve the people that are involved on the other side. So we need to make sure that when we're up at the State House, that just in Boston in general and Beacon Hill, that we're giving the residents in this state the information that they're asking for. They need to know what we're doing. Like, you should be able to see. You know how many bills were filed last session? 6,000. Not all those bills are going to get passed. And some of them, that's for good reason, because they're really not great bills. That's okay. But some of them are good bills that need to be considered. And so we need to look at why they're not getting passed and actually have some conversations. Sometimes they need tweaking. Sometimes they need to get to a committee. The committee looks at it, says, this has really got a lot of holes in it. You really didn't think this through, and we need to fix it. But I've sat in hearing rooms, listening, waiting for my turn to go up and speak and advocate at the table to the legislators. And I've actually listened to some of them, and they give great feedback, and they tell them this is what you need to work on. And then they need to come back with that. But just think about the amount of time and effort that needs to get put in from a legislator's perspective to make sure that you're looking at that. And so it's really kind of getting an idea, talking with leadership, building relationships to understand what's going to go forward so you can focus on the things that are going forward. And the things that aren't going forward, hopefully helping those people to see if those solutions are going to be able to get passed. My focus is really representing 40,000 of my friends and family and people in this community in the 9th Bristol District. That's what I want to focus on. So hopefully, when you're looking at who you want to select, you're going to realize that that's the person that's going to be doing that and going there to battle for you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We're now going to have another little mini round of questions from the audience, and I'll have Ed Pacheco start with the first one. Are you pro-life?
I think pro-life is a personal choice, just like pro-choice is. I am pro-choice. It is not the responsibility of the government to tell people what they should or should not be doing with their lives. I have 6 daughters, And if someone tried to advocate or dissuade them from something in their life, I would have a problem with that. I've raised my daughters to be independent, strong individuals with a brain in their heads and to make the right choices for themselves in their life. I do not believe that a bunch of men sitting in a legislative body should be advocating what should or should not happen in the privacy of someone's life. So no, I am not pro-life. I am pro-choice.
Steve, same question. Are you pro-life?
So this is something that I've thought a lot about since getting into this race. My faith tells me that we need to respect life, and we need to care about, the unborn child before they're born and advocate for them. But the other part of me says, there are situations where I think there are people who actually are in bad situations, and it's something that they need to look at that situation, and they don't want to do it, but unfortunately, that's their decision and their choice. My belief in my whole life has always been, I hope people choose life. That's what I hope people choose. I do have an issue with what was just recently passed. Third trimester, to me, again, doesn't make sense. That's when just common sense just doesn't make sense. So it's something that I'm continuously struggling with because of my faith and because of my beliefs, but I respect women's choice and their right to choose. And so, I'm unfortunately, I hate to say this, but I'm still struggling with that answer. I don't know, and I've listened to both sides, and I'm really trying to understand that. And that's probably the one thing that when you ask me a question, I'm going to say I don't know. Every other time, I'm going to probably give you a straight answer, but at this point, I'm just it's something that I'm struggling with, and I really haven't made a decision on it yet.
Okay, Steve, we're going to stick with you for the next one. Would you have voted for the Massachusetts Protection Act, which just passed the Massachusetts legislature?
Yeah, I would have voted for that. And the reason why is this. There are, we just had our 250th in this country, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And it talks about in that we have certain inalienable rights. And so when I look at people that are here, I believe people should be here legally. If they're not here legally, I think they need to be treated like human beings. I think they need to be given the opportunity to due process. And I feel that it's important for them to be treated the way I would want to be treated, the way I want my family to be treated, the way I want my great-grandparents who are immigrants coming here to be treated, fairly and justly. If someone's not here legally, they should be given a path to citizenship, or if they're here and they're causing problems and they're a criminal, then I think they definitely need to be removed. But again, following a process. I think the problem we've had right now and why this Protect Act came into play is because there wasn't a process. It was just like, let's throw a bag over someone's head, throw them in a van, and just take them out of the state. And I don't think anybody wants that to happen to somebody. So I've always believed in doing what's right and taking care of people. And so that's why I would vote for the Protect Act.
Thank you very much. And Ed, would you have voted for the Massachusetts Protection Act, which just passed the Massachusetts legislature?
I would have voted for it, and I would have voted with a smile on my face. The United States is a nation of laws. I know on a first-hand basis about the process of immigration because my wife and my entire extended family on her side are immigrants. They came here back in the 80s from São Paulo, Brazil. And there was a process that had to be followed. And they had to fill out paperwork, and they had to have sponsorship, and they had to have a place to live, and they had to have jobs. And that is the process that we have as an American. But the other part of being an American is that we treat people with respect. We treat people with compassion. You know, there's this kind of big statue sitting in the middle of New York Harbor that says, "Give me you're tired, you're oppressed." It didn't say anything about, "I'm going to throw a bag over their head and toss them into a back of a van," or like what happened in New Bedford North End, where because the person happened to be brown and looked like they had the same name as the person on the warrant, we're going to smash your car window in with your family in the car and pull you out the window. Oops, we got the wrong person. So the PROTECT Act was designed because they created the situation that required it. And our laws, as they are, were not sufficient enough to protect people. Do I believe that we need a pathway forward for immigration? Absolutely. But by demonizing immigrants and abusing immigrants and throwing immigrants in the back of vans and sticking them in these unbearable conditions is un-American. So I would have voted for it, and I would have voted with a smile on my face.
Thank you very much. And Steve, will stick with you for the next one. Unfunded state mandates often pass costs down to local town budgets and property taxpayers. What is your plan to ensure the state legislature doesn't force towns like Dartmouth to raise local property taxes?
You meant Ed on that, right? You said stick with him.
Pardon?
He just finished the question. He was going to start the next one. You said Steve,
yeah,
but
I
you
said
said stick
Ed.
with him. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
Ed, sorry.
Yeah.
So, me, yes?
Yes, it is,
okay.
sorry.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ed. Okay. So, yeah, unfunded mandates are something that will make any taxpayer's skin curl. I have, as a penny pincher, I have this thing about how dollars and cents are spent. You know, people think, oh, he's a Democrat. He's, tax and spend, tax and spend, tax and spend. No, I'm a conservative when it comes to income. And when it comes to spending, I am very moderate when it comes to those things because I understand the value of a dollar on a very personal level. So when it comes to things like unfunded mandates, which, first, I don't think the state should ever be telling towns or cities what their tax rate should be. It's incumbent of our town leadership, and there's a separation of powers there for a reason, for them to decide what our tax rate should be based on what the needs of the community are. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that we're giving the power back to towns and cities to let them administrate what it is. The second thing is we need to really start scrutinizing what these unfunded mandates are to see if they even make a difference in the world that they're proposing. Do these things impact one small segment of Massachusetts, or is it going to benefit the entire community? Because sometimes, let's face it, Boston is great at creating laws and rules that impact a select few that happen to hover around Beacon Hill. But when it comes to us, we kind of get the short end of the stick, i.e. Chapter 70 money, Chapter 90 money. The formulas are broken across the board. So before you start asking us and telling us what we need to fund, you better have a good explanation, and I'll be there to make sure that they do.
Thank you very much. No applauding. Steve, same question for you. Unfunded state mandates often pass costs down to local town budgets and property taxpayers. What is your plan to ensure state legislation doesn't force towns like Dartmouth to raise local property taxes?
Thank you. So we need to actually, as a legislator, I think as the entire legislature, has to look at what those mandates are. We need to understand what they're there for, and what the benefit is. So I don't like forcing things onto towns. I believe towns need to have their ability to make the decisions. That's one of the unique things in this country, is that Massachusetts is kind of a bottom-up system. We were built on town government first. If you go to many other parts of the country, county government is really where things kind of go, and then the towns kind of rely on county government. In Massachusetts, the towns, you have each town kind of on their own trying to make things work. And so I don't like when the state is forcing things onto the towns when they're unfunded. We need to look at all of that. And so I want to take what the mandates are, and if the town has an issue with it, again, my plan is to meet with leadership in both Dartmouth and New Bedford and say, what are your challenges? What are you seeing as the issues that you're like, okay, we can't work with this anymore? And then we can go back to the state and then try to figure out how we can solve that problem. Sometimes it's, needing to build relationships with enough legislators at the State House that they're having the same problem, and they can actually work with you to try to get this problem solved. When you're one legislator out of 160, you can't go up there and just say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this happen tomorrow, because it's not realistic. You have to have the people up there supporting you. And I've been building relationships up there for close to 15 years. And having those relationships gives me the ability already to hit the ground running on day one, because I know the people up there. When I walk in, they know who I am, and we can have a conversation.
Thank you very much, and we'll stick with you first for the last question in this segment. Affordability is not just about rent. What do you propose doing to reduce living costs?
So I think I've kind of talked about it already. Number one is, utility costs. I think we need to look at utility costs and find a way to bring utility costs down. Healthcare costs are something that we need to look at, because when you're looking at your budget, it's not like, okay, I only have to worry about housing over here, and I only have to worry about healthcare over here, and I only have to worry. It's all one budget. And so your budget has to make sense. And so if you're looking at, do I pay for healthcare? Do I pay for food? Do I pay utilities? Do I pay my rent or my house, my mortgage, whatever you got? All of that has to be taken into account. And so we need to look at each of the things that people are struggling with. Like I mentioned in the beginning, when I talk to people, the three things were the cost of housing, the cost of utilities, and just the cost of everyday goods. And then healthcare was the fourth item. So we need to look at what those challenges are, have conversations about what that is with the people that are going to be affected by that, and actually say, let's get to the table, let's sit down, and let's talk about how we're going to solve this. We have to have conversations. Going in and telling people this is how it's going to go is not going to be effective, and it's not going to be something that's going to help us get anywhere. You have to build a coalition, a group of people together to work together to say, hey, this is a problem. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. If we're having these problems in Dartmouth and in New Bedford, they're probably having these same problems in other communities across the state. And so if we can find out those communities that are having those challenges, and we can work with those other legislators who represent those communities, then we can work together to try to get things passed and actually solve the problem. You have 160 people. Thanks.
Thank you.
No problem.
Ed, same question for you. Affordability is not just about rent. What do you propose doing to reduce living costs?
So, a couple of things. The first thing is we really need to evaluate what our living wages situation is. We can look at all of the other expenses all we want, but if we don't address first the fact that people aren't are struggling in the jobs that they're working because of what they're being paid for the work that they're doing, you're not going to treat the causes without getting to the root of it. And the root is people aren't making living wages. So we need to really evaluate what we're paying people and for the value of the labor that they're doing. Educators shouldn't have to work 2 jobs, right? So, we need to make sure that we're paying people what they're worth to help combat that type of thing. The second thing is, again, we need to start putting more pressure on the DPU. We need to start asking them, hey, listen, you guys are having these bills with all of these charges, right? We get our utility bills. We get a daytime charge on our electric bill. We get a nighttime charge on our electric bill. We get a refrigerator light charge. They're ridiculous. But we're not getting anything in return for it. So we need to start making sure that we're holding the utility companies more accountable. And instead of them posting $1.5 billion profits every year, we need to make sure that our utilities are more affordable for the people that are using them. And then lastly, healthcare, which I talked about. I think that we really need to dive deeply into healthcare for all. That is a real dollars and cents impact on people's lives. You know what you pay for healthcare. Everyone in this room pays something different depending on what plan you're on. But it's expensive is the common denominator. So if we can take that ball out of the court, then that's another significant amount of money put into people's pockets. So that's how we address that.
Thank you very much. If those of you who have a copy of our procedure, we are now at step 10. And here, each candidate will ask the other a question. We had a coin toss before the event started, and Steve Medeiros will ask the first question of Ed Pacheco. 2-minute candidate reply. Steve, go.
Thank you. Voters in our district are deeply tired of just dirty politics and negative campaigns. What specific ethical standards do you hold your campaign to, especially when it comes to third-party or outside money groups getting involved in local primaries?
Wow. Okay, so here's the thing. When we talk about money coming into campaigns, I always like to look at the whole picture. So in this instance, I am not the establishment candidate, in case you haven't figured that out by now. My campaign has raised about $20,000 from people like most of you sitting in this room. A majority of my donations have been from small donors, $50, $75, $100. I have a few large donors in there, but overwhelmingly, my people are hardworking people. They are union workers, they are retirees, and their family. So I don't knowingly take PAC money, and I am not responsible for the content of what other action committees take on their own. Back in the day, Chris Markey got an endorsement letter from Governor Charlie Baker's PAC without asking for it. Does that mean that Chris Markey is pro-Republican? No. It's that PAC took that position against his opponent for whatever reason they felt compelled. But as far as my campaign goes, I have been issues focused from day one on my website. I have been issues focused when I'm talking to the voters of the 9th Bristol District. And for the next 3 weeks from today, that's exactly what we will continue to do.
Now you ask a question.
Okay. I was really trying to decide which way I wanted to go with this. I think we've heard enough about real estate, so we're not going to talk about that. Steve, how do you measure how our tax dollars are being used wisely or not?
So I look at the impact. Whenever I see that there's money that's being spent, it has to have a positive impact and do what it's intended to do. So if money's being spent on any level, town level, city level, state level, national level, there's an intended impact that that money is supposed to generate for the people at whatever level it is. If the money is not generating the impact that was intended, then it needs to get reevaluated. And either whatever that money was intended for, whatever program or whatever it is actually making the impact that it's supposed to, great. But if it's not, you reevaluate it. If you can't fix it, then it probably shouldn't be spent. And that's just what you do in your household, right? And when you're looking at your household budget, you look at, am I supposed to be spending money on this? I'm spending money on it. Is it really doing what it's supposed to do? And if it isn't, you don't spend money on it anymore. So that's how I look at it. I think you need to evaluate budgets and just look at it and say, how is this money? And have this. A lot of times, there's tons of studies that are done on a regular basis. The town does it. They just did an impact study back in the spring on wages, and they wanted to see what the impact was on that. So doing a study, looking at what the information is, and making an educated decision, to me, is what's important.
Thank you very much. Let me say that as we planned this and as I got started, my goal was to, I knew it could be hot in this room, my goal was to keep this under an hour, and I failed at that. I kind of thought I would. Then my second goal was to keep it under, first goal was keep it under an hour, and the second goal was keep it under an hour and a half. And assuming that I shut up pretty soon, I might make that one. But before I do, I want to thank the people who made this happen. It's a lot of work to make the planning and the development and the physicality of this room. All of your questions that came in went to Bess Coughlin. She was the question organizer by category. We're going to keep all the questions. We might use them later or at some other time. We had 2 timekeepers, Susan LeClaire and Jean Connolly, and we had 4 sergeant-at-arms, which we didn't need. They hadn't had to shoot hardly anybody. Pam McNamara, Jeannie Robinson, Amelia Koch, and Robbie Watkins. I wanted to thank all of them. And in general, the Dartmouth Democratic Town Committee thanks you for your interest in this race and for your patience and for abiding by a civil process. That meant a lot. It shows a lot about the character of Dartmouth and New Bedford. And I congratulate all of you and thank you for coming. And thanks to the candidates.